Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, October the 12th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for this beautiful Friday. And we're going to try to get off to a good start for you this week by helping to pick you up and give you something good to feel about and think about and so forth, and maybe even help to remove some of the burdens you're carrying. Of course, you're the only one who could do that, but nevertheless, we figure we can help if we can just, give you a couple of ideas, a couple of tips, and once you do, you feel better. And that's what it's all about, Tom.
Yeah, it's definitely about that.
No doubt.
We're all headed in that direction.
That's encouraging, I find. Just knowing that there are more and more of us who are doing that kind of thing. Louise and I rewatched an old movie, The Celestine Prophecy, last night. And one of the themes of that movie is that more and more people are becoming more and more aware of what we would call source energy, what they just called energy, and that this source energy is where we get all of our energy from. If we know how to do it, it's where we get all of our ability to create from. The mechanism that gets used to create comes from that source energy, and ultimately becomes how we continue to grow and expand and build and be who we are. And it's a nice theme. It's a positive theme. It's a theme that says things are getting better. Well, we're doing the same thing here. We're helping things get better. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Well, yeah. Everything that we do in a certain way is about that, because we're always on this journey, right? And even if it's appearing to be not so positive, it could be exactly, and I believe it is exactly what's needed at that moment. So we're never in the wrong place. Sort of that thing, you can't get it wrong, and you'll never get it done. And the reason you can't get it wrong is because you'll never get it done. And therefore you're on this infinite journey. And it's just a matter of the perspective we take on what's happening as to whether we think it's a negative thing that's setting us back somehow, or it's or that we're stuck, or that we're actually just exactly where we need to be, and whatever's happening is somehow exactly what needs to happen at that moment. And
everything always works out in the end. When it really comes down to it, it all works out. Getting there can be a little bit frustrating, but when we get there, it's all worked out.
Some say it may take lifetimes, but I know Abraham said that you figured out the second you crossed into the unseen realm. You realize all the stuff that's been going on, and you understand it all. But I don't know. I don't know how all that really works, but I do believe that it's all ultimately unfolding exactly the way it needs to unfold. And as long as I keep that perspective, I don't get quite as down about anything that's happening, because I can quit blaming myself for being ignorant or being otherwise hurtful towards myself.
Boy, that's so important too. Just letting go of being so critical of ourselves is, first of all, not easy to do, because there's so many ways that we do it that we aren't even necessarily aware of. And secondly, it's often hard to let go just because we're so conditioned to, well, somebody's got to be held accountable. Somebody's got to be held responsible,
Yeah. And somebody does have to be held responsible. But the question is, do they have to be held responsible in a critical way? Or can they simply look at it in a witnessing way, where they take a step back and go, well, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I see this as my behavior, but that doesn't make me wrong or a bad person or some kind of otherwise deviant personality. It's just simply what I'm ignorantly doing to myself or to others. And I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop that blame and that shame and that guilt and that blameful expression towards others, and I'm going to own the fact that I'm doing this because of something that I need to learn. It's a development of my character, and I'm needing to learn something here, and I'm needing to grow and transform, and get in touch with these things that I'm feeling, so that I can get more aligned with Source. Just like you were saying, when we get that alignment going, then we start feeling different. We start feeling, wow, I'm an incredible being. I've been confused, but I don't need to stay confused.
Cindy Chavez has a really interesting take on this. We actually, for the last few weeks, we've been doing like chapter by chapter on one of Neville Goddard's books. And Goddard as you may know, has he has a rather unique and kind of old-fashioned way of expressing himself because he
Yeah.
started as a very devout Christian, and
Uh,
he believes he remained and kind of evolved into the ultimate devout Christian. Although
right.
most of Christianity would consider most of what he wrote to be heretical, but nevertheless, that was the way he looked at it. And
Blasphemous.
yeah, oh, definitely very blasphemous. But he had he would use a large number of the terminologies that Christianity would use, and one of the terms that he would use was sin. And the
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing was he would use the word sin the way it was originally defined in Hebrew. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Cindy is actually a bit of a Hebrew scholar, and so she already knew about this and kind of passed it along in one of our podcasts. And it turns out that the original meaning of the word sin is to be off the mark, which is
Mm-hmm.
not the way we normally think of it today. But when you understand it that way, then you realize that forgiveness of sin means just correcting your aim. It has nothing to do
Hmm.
with blame at all. It just has to
Uh-huh.
do with aiming better, aiming truer.
Uh-huh.
That's all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well,
And
when you,
in, when I took Latin, the word sin means without,
mm,
and I was told that in the ancient columns that were made in Rome, that the ones that were solid stone were considered without the columns that were made with wax down the center to make them lighter weight, but they weren't as strong. And so sin meant the to be without something, and so when I very first heard that when I was in Catholic high school, I thought, oh, so sin means, and then I came to realize eventually, well, you're without your alignment to source, so sin is simply when you're not feeling aligned with source. You're without that sense of your connection to the divine, which you were talking about with the Celestine prophecy. That
mm,
how wonderful it is when we do feel aligned. You know.
yeah. And well, there's just another nice way of saying that essentially we can leave the blame part behind. So we're on a good topic today. This is a topic we all need to learn to do more often and as often as possible because the less that we engage in blame, the better off we are. That's the thing that's so interesting about it, right?
Yeah,
Whenever we
that
engage
is,
in blame, the one we're hurting the most is ourselves.
that's right. That's the bottom line. And the thing that I think that's so hard to understand is that when we come in to this life, we are completely responsible for you know and then this is debatable, but this is the way I understand it. We're responsible for everything that's happening to us. So we chose those parents, we chose those conditions that we're born into, we choose everything our whole life as quantum physics would say, it's our holographic projection. So we're projecting it all out there as reality.
Right.
And then we're saying, well, this stuff is happening to me, but it really isn't. It's being projected onto our screen as our movie, but it's ultimately for the development of this being that we are. Like somehow we create this 3D reality to develop our character. I don't understand it, but it's like it seems to be the game we're playing here. Like, why do we come here with those particular parents in that particular household, in that particular city you're born into those particular economic conditions you're born into, et cetera, that then shape your whole life, your whole character. And is there room in there somewhere to blame somebody else for causing all that to happen, even to blame something that we call God? So where does but at what point do we go, we are the ones who are co-creating with this source energy, and we're doing it all for some kind of beautiful reason. It's not really about all the suffering that we're creating and then to lay blame somewhere, on ourselves or on somebody else.
Yeah. Well, actually,
I just
one
find
of my favorite ways to express what you described about how we come into the world is
mm-hmm.
to ask the question, "What on earth was I thinking?"
And that's a good what on earth, right?
Yeah.
What in 3D reality
Yeah,
was I
that's
thinking?
right.
Like why would I come here and make that happen? It's like and yet I've been reading a lot of stuff lately that talks about we do carry forward from lifetime to lifetime certain things we're working on. And I don't know, Abraham doesn't seem to say that, but I've read a lot of others that do say that. And so I really don't know. I mean, all these ancient Hindu philosophies and things certainly believe that we're carrying forward these patterns that we're working on. And so we come into this life, and like I can look like really clearly and see, well, I must have chosen those parents because they would give me the perfect opportunity to work on this lack of self-love that I had and this self-hatred I had. So I could blame them for not loving me enough. I could blame them for being messed up people and saying, gee, too bad my mother was so screwed up by her parents, and too bad my dad lost his dad when he was 6 and had the environment he had, and therefore he influenced me in this way. And everywhere it's pointing the finger of blame, in a sense, saying that, well, that's how come I ended up the way I am. And if I've got any problems today, or if I had any problems in my life, it's because, I was the victim of these situations. And of course, this is a terrible topic for people who've felt victimized. And I know you've had a lot of podcasts about that topic. Like, and I don't want anyone out there in radio land to think that, podcast land, to think that they have to own the fact that somebody raped them or something. But ultimately it's a non-blame fact. It seems to me that we are the creators of our own reality, and it doesn't mean we don't interact with other people who are creating their own reality, and we're interacting with that. But,
no, it's true. It's true. And before we get any further, I want to make sure I get our promo messages out of the way.
Promo messages, yeah.
Promo time. First things first, if you're not yet a subscriber, please become a subscriber. It's simple to do. The instructions are on the homepage at loatoday-net. I have now made as simple as it can possibly be. If you're an iPhone user or an iPad user, you click on that icon. If you're an Android user, you click on that icon, and it just takes you through the rest of it. You don't even have to do anymore. So we made it as simple as possible. And of course, for those of you who know how to do it without getting led through the whole process, you just go to the right place, either the iTunes or the Play Store, depending on what device you have, and do a search on LOA Today. Second message is we want all of our subscribers, both new ones and existing ones who've been around for a long time, to continue to post, or maybe even start posting if you haven't posted yet, just somewhere on social media about loatoday.net, because all those posts are really helping more and more people to find out about the Daily Dose of Happy. And that makes me happy, Tom. The more people who find out about that, the happier I get, which is kind of funny because we teach about how we're supposed to reach inside for the happiness. But in this case, I reach outside for the happiness.
Right on. Well, I had a piece of chocolate last night. I reached right outside for that.
There you go.
And I made myself a nice burrito last night, so I reached right outside for the happiness.
There you go.
I even anticipated the burrito for hours before I made it. I was like, oh, I'm going to have a good dinner tonight.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately,
there's nothing wrong with reaching out. Reaching out's a good thing. I mean, really it is. The idea, I think, is to use the reaching out experience to learn also how to reach inside, because when we can do both, then we are really becoming deliberate creators, because now we aren't dependent upon what happens outside for our happiness.
Yeah. Now, this comes back to our topic of today. Do we get any benefit by doing blameful expression of others? I'm watching on the news these days, how many people, I don't watch the news too much, but
because it's not good for you.
Well, I actually, I can end up having some really weird thoughts go through my head. After, some of the things that are happening, you see it, and then later I'm having these really horrendous thoughts. I'm thinking, duh, I watched that thing about that guy and blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to talk about it because it's so ugly. But, it's like stuff that we've put into our heads. We tend to sometimes then get focused on that. Mm-hmm. But one thing I did notice was how many people are blaming other people in a very vindictive way. Very, very what's the word? Spiteful and vicious and venomous, kind of like anger towards other people, like some of the people who want to be on the Supreme Court, or some of the people who want to be president and things like that. And it completely is, it's no wonder that it's the subject of stand-up comics, material, whether, no matter what late night host it is. And, or I'm sure if you went to any stand-up comedy going on these days, it's going to just be full of blameful expressions towards all kinds of people in office and things like that. And I'm not condoning the people in office by saying that. I'm just saying that the reason I wanted to do this podcast is I was going to ask the question, does it really help any of us to do blameful expression towards anybody? I talked about one time watching football with my friends, and it was right after I really was getting heavily into law of attraction, and noticing that as long as the team, in this case it was the Denver Broncos because I live in the Denver area, and as long as they were doing something good at that moment, it would tend towards the conversation in the room of the 4 or 5 people there would tend towards praising them a little bit and talking about some good qualities of the Broncos. But then the second anybody did anything that screwed up and could turn the tide of the game, there would be this huge recrimination coming out in the room of how horrible the effing Broncos are and how horrible this particular person is, as a receiver, or how can that quarterback be like that? And oh my God, this just proves that the Broncos are such a losing team, and they're just going to do the whole thing they did last year all over again. And oh my God, I can't stand to even watch this team because they're such oh, look, he just did something good. Oh my God, look at that. Oh, way to go, And, and it would just crack me up because I could see the law of attraction so strongly, taking place there of this blame, thing. And these are armchair quarterbacks who some of them can't even walk a mile, because of the problem with their foot or something. And yet they're like completely putting down these incredible athletes
right.
who, and I'm just thinking, what's the real value? It's a bonding thing, right? To all get together and say how much we hate the Republicans, how much we hate the Democrats, we hate the liberals, we hate the
conservatives. It's a venting thing, really. All those things that you're describing are venting things. Yeah. And you especially do see it in sports circles. In fact, I have observed in the past that if you want to, personally, I don't recommend betting on any kind of sporting event, but if you do want to bet on it, one of the best factors you can use to decide who's going to win is to go to the chat board or chat room or whatever of the fans of the respective teams and see who posts the most negative stuff about their own team. Whichever one posts the most negative stuff about their own team, 95% of the time that team's going to lose.
I could believe that, yeah. Yeah, no, they say, in football and other sports, it's the attitude of the crowd, of the hometown crowd.
It's huge. I mean, hometown advantage is well documented. I mean, on average, it gives you, if the likelihood of winning a game is 50-50, hometown advantage will knock that up to 60-40.
Yeah,
that's how strong it is.
A really good study to do would be in a town that's been traditional losers. Like these kind of towns that haven't won the World Series since 1903, or they haven't won a Super Bowl. They've lost like the last 8 times they went to the Super Bowl,
right,
or they've never been to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, or these teams that every year, they end up in second to last place or last place, and then some of those teams I've watched, when they show the crowd, and literally, I don't know if it was the Cleveland Browns or somebody, literally like halfway through the game, half of the stands were empty by, even though they were kind of full when the game started, because they have such a habit of the second they see their team losing, they know they're just going to lose, and they go home.
Yeah.
They say, oh, let's go home, honey.
They're defeated before the game is over. It's true.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure they're defeated before the game starts. And then, of course, the team feels that. And then, of course, that they hire. Law of attraction says they're all their hiring and everything's going to be affected by the general attitude surrounding them all. And I just see like it's going on in politics constantly, and this vindictiveness across the aisle, and then of course lately we're seeing all these people confronting people in hallways and elevators and everything. And part of me goes, yeah, go fight those guys, like make them wrong, because they're all misogynistic men who advocate, like treating women like crap. And there's part of me that's like wants those people to be, judged, blamed, and shamed, and otherwise, publicly humiliated. And that this other part goes, but wait a minute, all of that is, is just going to entrench further into this country this venomous, vile, vindictive judgment of each other, and it won't ever process the feelings that are really behind all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The feelings of hurt, the feelings of anger, the feelings of sadness and disappointment that come from the way people treat each other. And
That's
so
true.
how do we ever deal with the real feelings, that are behind all this stuff? And that's why I
We're not
wanted
going
to
to deal with it, obviously, if we just keep blaming each other. That's
right.
actually probably one of the primary reasons for blame. Because if you blame somebody, you don't actually have to deal with it.
That's right. You don't really have to take the responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the same if you blame yourself. If you get into guilt and just like recrimination against yourself, then you're also avoiding your own feelings, which are, it's easier to do that sometimes than it is to feel how sad you feel that you didn't have the love you wanted to have when you were a kid, or that, how angry you feel that you were treated that way when you were 7 years old by your mother, who said that thing to you that, was so offensive, that was so, made you feel so unloved, but it's the feeling inside of us where all the work needs to be done, that feeling of hurt, that feeling of sadness, that feeling of anger. Those are the things that can be processed. We can't process, feeling guilty or feeling blame. Those things just have to be dropped, to get to the deeper feelings that are underneath everything.
Yeah, really, that's at the root of letting go, isn't it? Letting go of stuff, letting go of resistances, as they're called by Abraham. And I think it's a good word for them, because
Yes,
those resistances are the main primary reason why the stuff we most want to happen or to arrive or to experience aren't happening, arriving, or experiencing, because we're resisting them, even though we think we're not, which is really ironic when you think about that, because we really don't believe that we're resisting them, right?
Yeah. Right.
But nevertheless, we are. We're still resisting it. It's the resistance is there. We kind of blocked it away from our conscious mind, so we're not, consciously aware of it. But it's still there. Still going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's resistance of feeling on any level is the crux of our not moving forward in the way that we want our lives to go, because we're somehow believing that that it's easier to run these patterns of guilt or blame or shame or something on ourselves than to say, I have feelings underneath all this that are so hard for me to accept. How could it be that I could not love myself? How could it be?
Which is really ironic when you think about it, because like you said, we think it's easier to go that route. It actually isn't. It's actually much, much harder going that route. But it seems easier at first anyway. I think it probably seems easier because we don't actually have to make any kind of an effort to refocus our mind. We can just go with the flow and just wherever my life takes me, I'll just pay attention to that, and I'll just assume all of it is what's reality, and I won't even take on any kind of responsibility for deciding I want something different.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have to feel the feeling that's behind it, which is sometimes seems like it would be very, very uncomfortable to feel.
Oh, God, yes.
If I felt that rejected when I was a little kid, if I felt that much hatred towards my parents, if I felt that much sadness and disappointment about what I felt like I was not able to feel, to actually be denied love, or to feel like I was the one denying the love to myself, really, why would I ever do that? And yet somehow these deeper feelings are what have to be felt so that they can lead us back towards our alignment.
That's what leads me to always say, oh, darn, I can't get away with anything.
That's right. That's right. That's probably the biggest, one of the biggest messages of law of attraction is you really can't get away with anything.
The only thing left at that point is to laugh at it, because, well, it's either laugh or cry, one or the other. There's no whole lot in between.
Yeah.
But we are really rough on ourselves. We're so rough on ourselves, and that blame criticism cycle that we put ourselves through creates more havoc in our lives than we are in most of our conscious minds willing to give credence to. And yet it's true all the time, every single time that we're being that critical, or any critical, that we're being blaming, that we're in any way involved in the idea of fault.
Mm-hmm.
That's the moment that we're being really rough on ourselves. And it doesn't seem like it's all that rough, does it? Until you experience the fallout, the consequences, and then, oh, yeah, I guess that is pretty rough.
Yeah, or rough on somebody else. Yeah,
Either way, yeah.
and it's we have to first be rough on ourselves to be rough on somebody else, because we have to make this sort of decision, this judgment, before we even start yelling at somebody else and making them extremely wrong.
Well,
We
exactly. I mean, I think people who are rough
we
on other people are even rougher on themselves. I
yes,
don't think
I
there's
do too.
anybody who is less rough on themselves when they're rough on somebody else.
Exactly,
And you
exactly.
can see it. You can see it in the way people age. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but the people I've noticed this, the people who are the ones who lash out the most often are the ones who seem to have the shorter lives
Hmm. I could believe that.
and
Sure.
have the more health problems and have the more relationship problems and have the more fill in the blank problems. I mean,
Hmm.
there's just more of it.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's feeding back into the system this, this blockage, this resistance,
Hmm.
and that is, like they say, all disease and all disease processes and even accidents that happen to us are all the result of a resistance that's finally showing up in a way that we can't avoid it. It's like now you're going to see your resistance in the form of heart disease, or in the form of diabetes, or in the form of cancer, or like you have some big accident and you realize, or you don't realize, but I mean, it's like, well, this is what's the wake up call here? What's the life trying to tell me? Well, it's trying to tell you that you're in so much denial about owning your own feelings about your life, that it's having to get your attention by finally showing up on the surface of your life in a way that you can't but avoid. The
Hmm.
message.
Yeah.
um, Look how many people get cancer, and then they spend years sometimes working on themselves after that, because they realize how much they've been in denial of their own deeper anger, their own deeper sadness. And often it is somebody who has a very strong hit on some kind of incredible disappointment in their life, or some kind of incredible rage they have towards a parent, or towards their own self, that they're just so angry at their own self for not living up to what their expectation of themselves was, or not, being having the money they wanted to have or something. But then the blame gets so strong that it turns into finally this kind of disease, because they just don't know how to process the feeling that's behind it all, which is this intense sadness that they felt ever since they were 5 years old, or
Hmm.
something, you know.
So I think we've pretty fairly identified what the problem is. Let's see if we can identify what the possible solutions are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, otherwise, I'm just getting depressed listening to this. So I need to find some way out of this
Oh,
little trap I'm in.
brother. Oh, I'm so sad. You're getting depressed. No, I'm getting excited because I guess because I know that there's a way to process emotions, and I know, and
Ah.
right now in my life I'm doing nothing but. And so
So what are
I'm
you doing?
finding,
Talk about what you're doing. Because I mean, there are probably a lot of people who recognize from what we were talking about a little bit of themselves in it. And you know,
Mhm,
after we're exposed to this idea for a bit, we think, okay, I get it, but what can I do about it?
mhm. Well, you have to directly experience the energy of the emotion that is behind it all, or the emotions. And to do that, it takes becoming aware of what those emotions are, what the feelings are that are being held inside on a deeper level. And then, allow those, once those feelings are even, uh, you're aware that they're even there. And a lot of times you're not even aware what they are, and I think that's where the most work is happening for me, is I'm trying to become aware of what these feelings are. I'm working with a therapist whose specialty is grief work and that kind of stuff. And then she's really a coach, a life coach. And then I'm going to be starting a class next week that'll go for 8 weeks, and I'll be reporting on that on the podcast. And
Okay.
that's a class in in the entire method of how do you discover these inner emotions. So first step is you become aware of them. The second step is you decide that you're going to accept that you do have these feelings. You're going to accept that they're there. And then you're going to accept that you have to take responsibility for them, that these are, if this kind of situation is showing up in my life, then there's some kind of feeling inside me behind it. And that's why I'm creating the projection of that situation into my life. So you start to own that. And then you find ways to clear them. You find ways to do, like through meditation, through breath work, through body work, such as yoga. Yoga is a really good way to work on it. Certain affirmations, for example, starting to say affirmations like it's okay that I feel extreme blame. It's okay that I feel guilt inside. It's okay, and then you look at the feeling behind it. It's okay that I have really strong anger towards my parent, towards my mother behind this. So it's okay that I have extreme, judgment of my spouse. And I accept that. I accept that I have that extreme judgment. So try to accept these emotions without them making yourself wrong or the other person or anybody else wrong. So that's a huge step, because you're starting to say, okay, nobody's wrong here. There is no such thing as wrong. It's just, this is the situation that I'm creating for some reason. Now I want to own it on a deeper level. And so learning to be with the emotions. I mean, for 3 different days this week, I woke up with this dread that starts in my stomach. I wake up feeling fantastic, which is really funny. And then, that's the first few moments. I'm coming out of being with Source all night. And then I start feeling this thing building in my gut, and it's like, oh, here it comes. This is the feeling I live with throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can't stop it. It's like I would like to, but anyway, it comes usually. And I kind of try to not allow it to come. I kind of just try to be easy about it. But, pretty soon I've got this pain in my right side that comes and gets stronger and stronger. And I call it my psoas muscle because it seems to be centered in that muscle, and for years and years now. And so then, now I'm doing this process where I get up, I lay down on my yoga mat, and I put a blanket over myself, and I put on my headphones, and I listen to this hour of work by this guy that I'm going to do this course with, John Ruskin out of New York, and who wrote the book Emotional Clearing. And but he offers like this $100 12 MP3s you can get. I think it's about 12 MP3s, and each one leads you through a process, an hour-long process or 40-minute-long process, where he takes you into being with your breath in a very precise way to be with your breath. And he teaches how to do the breathing. See, breathing is the key. I mean, breathing is key to getting through all this stuff. So you get into this breath cycle, and then from that, you begin to go into this position of witnessing the thing. You pick an event or a feeling that you want to deal with that particular session, and maybe something that's come up with your spouse, or something that's come up around work, or something that's come up around money, or something that's come up around your health, but a feeling that you're having, and it can just even be a feeling in your body. So the last 3 days, I've had this feeling in my side of this incredible pain. And so I lay down on the ground and on the mat, and I put on the headphones. I start listening to his music and his words, because he takes you into what's called an alpha state, where you're much more receptive to the transformation that needs to take place and to processing your feelings. And so he said, if you can't get in, or you don't want to get in touch with some feeling of the problem you're having with your spouse or something that's come up around some other issue, do you have a feeling in your body? So I say, yeah, I've got a feeling in my body. It's really painful in my right side. So what happened was I get in touch with this pain as I'm doing this process, and oh my God, the pain just starts to multiply, and it multiplies and it multiplies to the point where I felt like this is literally taking me to the emergency room in the past. It was about 3 years ago, but I had to go to the emergency room 3 years ago because the pain I woke up in the morning and it started, and I said, oh, well, I can handle this. I've handled it before. And so I go downstairs and I'm laying on the couch and doing some things, and the pain's building and the pain's building and the pain. And by 10 o'clock, I was trying to drive myself to the emergency room after having taken some very strong painkillers,
Mm,
and then I spent 4 hours in the emergency room, and they finally said, well, we think it was a kidney stone, but it's already passed because we didn't ever see a stone, but
right.
it must have been that. But I'm sitting there going, no, it's anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So here I was the last 3 days laying on my living room floor, on my mat, like processing this pain. And I started realizing there is something in me that is so hurt. It is so yelling at me. I don't even know what it is. So now, you say, well, how do you deal with this stuff? Well, I'm trying to find out what it is, but I don't need to know. What I need to do is just continue to do these processes of being with my breath and being with it. And sometimes just becoming aware of the feeling and sitting with it in a non-judgmental way, in a non-critical way, and in a way you don't feel you have to go out and do anything about it. You simply witness the feeling. It will begin to dissipate. Feelings that we've had for our whole life of self-hatred, of deep anger, deep resentment, deep sadness, deep grief. These things can dissipate by simply being with them in the witness position. So instead of being immersed in it and feeling all the misery of it, we notice the misery of it, but then we take a step back into the witness position. And John Ruskin, in his work, he teaches you how to take a step back. And this is what I'm getting trained now as an emotional clearing facilitator, so that I can work with clients to help them go through this process. Because I don't think it's that easy. I think it does take clarity, but meditation, just as Abraham says, meditation is the key. You've got to go into a meditative state, and you got to be with your breath, and then let the feeling be there. Have an event or something that you're aware of, or a feeling in your body that you're aware of, and then just be with it for a while and breathe into it and see what happens, see how it'll transform. But know that the work is going to take place, because source energy, source that we are, wants us to be cleared. That's your daily dose of happiness. It's like
Yeah.
you can be cleared of these deeper painful things that you've been carrying your whole life or for many years.
And it is interesting to note exactly what you just said, which is that when you focus in this, as you described it, in a witness way, when you do that, it does dissipate. It does tend to dissolve itself and go away.
It might not all happen at once.
No, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes, it varies. But the interesting thing is it does go away. And interestingly enough, especially if it's something that goes away fairly easily, it can often go away without even knowing what it was.
That's right. And that's what I'm
really
saying
wild.
about this pain in my guts. I don't know if I'll ever know what this really is a combination of. I feel like it almost feels to me like every emotion I've ever suppressed and repressed my entire life is trying to tell me, I'm going to kill you if you don't listen to me.
Yeah, right.
And so for 3 days I did, and the pain was excruciating and made me think, what the heck is this? How will this ever go away? Well, the fourth day, which was yesterday, I laid down to do one of these, and there was no pain there whatsoever.
Wow, yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen again the next time I do it, because it was later in the day, and I noticed that it's only really there in the morning. Like after I did all this intense work on it these 3 days, I would get up and then go make my breakfast and go through my day and not ever feel it hardly at all during the entire day. So every once in a while I get this little tinge of pain, but I said, where does it go? It's like, but on the other hand, I know that it can dissipate. So I have to have this great faith and trust that life is really designed to work out.
And by the way, I think we should also point out, it isn't always as excessively painful as this one was for you. I mean, this one was really, 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 really extremely painful. But 99% of them are nowhere near that painful.
I guess. I don't know. It's individual to each person. Like whatever each person is carrying. this one woman I'm learning from, her name is Debbie Ford, and she's written all kinds of books on this, working with your shadow work. And she ended up dying of horrendous tumors throughout her whole body. But she did this work for years.
Yeah.
She did it, and she trained people in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you explain? You can't explain anybody else's journey. I mean, everybody's on their own unique path through lifetimes, I think. And so I think Debbie Ford just, had stuff, and even though she did a lot of work on it, it doesn't mean that you're going to be home free just because you do the work. But there might not be any other alternative but to do the work. That's what I'm seeing.
It could be. It could be. I think also a lot of it has to do with what we're expecting. I mean, law of attraction teaches us that what we focus on and what we believe is what's going to tend to manifest. So if we believe it's going to be intensely painful, it's almost certainly going to be intensely painful. If we believe that it's going to be a lot easier to get rid of, it's almost certainly going to be a lot easier to get rid of.
Well, and by law of attraction, you could say, well, if you believe you have intense emotions that are unprocessed from childhood, then you're going to find them, and they're going to have to show up for you. So
that's right.
I'm questioning the whole thing I'm doing. I'm questioning what, but I came around to this because I found something was really talking to me in my life, and, these pains in my body and different symptoms in my sinus condition and candida and things that were happening in my relationships and things happening with money and career. They were all saying to me, you got some stuff, you got stuff going on, and so I wanted to say, well, what is it? And because I was trying to just let it dissipate by just going general. I was trying to let it dissipate by doing my appreciation journal. I was trying to let it dissipate by practicing, focus wheels. I was trying to let it dissipate by, just not focusing on it, focusing only on the better feeling story that I want to have happen in my life. But I found that all that stuff was just not enough, that I had some really strong things talking to me, and I had to finally say, well, if Abraham said all of our emotions are a guidance system, then maybe I need to listen to what this emotion is that I'm so much not listening to, because it's showing up as disease. It's showing up as conflicts with my partner. It's showing up as problems with money, so what is it? What is it? And that's why I decided that I wanted to look at this stuff. And
perfectly good
and
reason too.
All of psychology is based on this belief. All of psychology is based on the belief that there are things that we're in denial of, and they are called emotions, and that's called your guidance system. So if you're in denial of the very guidance system that, that's trying to tell you how to to get realigned with your source self, then you better listen at some point. That's why I looked at it.
Now, what do you think the role of something like kindness or kindness toward oneself plays in this process? Because as I've heard other people describe similar things, other coaches here on the podcast or even articles I've read or whatever, a main feature in many of them is the idea that as we are in the process of unearthing this stuff, so to speak, we're also cherishing it. We're appreciating the message, but we're also cherishing the being within and basically being kind and loving to ourselves as a way of kind of like providing an antidote to the roughness, the rough way we've been treating ourselves all this time.
Well, I think it's the essence of it, and I think it's something that I'm still wrestling with, because I've had a lifetime of being critical of myself and being hard on myself. And so learning to be kind in the midst of it all, and in fact, not only being kind, but go ahead and apply these principles of law of attraction that are going general, so you can relax a little bit. Or, the other day I got out my appreciation journal. And I said, let me look at the things I appreciate about all this thing I'm going through and this thing I've chosen. And let me look at other things in my life that are working fantastic, because so many things are. And it doesn't hurt. It's just that there's a fine discrimination that each of us, I think, has to make between am I repressing feelings by trying to gloss over them with a happy face. It's like putting a happy face on your empty gas gauge, like Abraham talks about that. You can get a little sticker, put it right over that gas gauge, and you won't know when you're out of gas, and so it's like, don't do that. By using all your law of attraction things that make you have a happy face, instead recognize what your emotions are telling you and let your happiness come from truly letting the emotion lead you back to your alignment. But sometimes that emotion, you might go through a rough patch, you might go through a difficult time, but that's okay, because you're going to be better off for it as it's sort of like if you have some disease and you've got to finally go deal with it. Well, some of the treatments can be unpleasant, but once you've done the treatment, you're going to feel a whole lot better. So it's a fine line, that go do good feeling things, and notice when you're putting a happy face on your empty gas gauge, but because really you're feeling you need to go get gas. It's like that thing of laying down new pipes that Abraham talks about. There's the old pipes, are clogged and they're just not working. So you just lay down new pipes over them. And, but sometimes, you work first to unclog the old pipes, and sometimes the old pipes can be unclogged. You don't have to lay down the new pipes.
Well, of course,
So
Abraham really isn't saying put a happy face on top of it like a sticker to block what's really going on. I mean, that's not really what they say at all. What they're
no,
talking
I'm
about.
saying they're saying don't do that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in fact, I think all of the major teachers basically say the same thing. I mean, I think the happy face sticker, that's kind of the equivalent of fake it till you make it, and fake it till you make it has its place. It does have a useful role. The tricky part of that is recognizing when it's not actively producing or actually leading to the feeling that you're looking for, and encouraging you to go in a direction you really don't want to go into. But I believe that in any given situation where there is something negative, something unpleasant, something you don't really like going on inside, and maybe you have the urge to put that sticker on top, right? Well, instead of putting the sticker on top, there is always an alternative way to get to a happier feeling place without faking it. And it's a question of learning what those methods are. It's going to be different from one case to the next. But nevertheless, they do exist. And sometimes it's just as simple as reframing it. Not that I don't feel the pain anymore. That's not reframing. Reframing is, I appreciate the message that the pain gave me.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that I'm aware of this. I appreciate the fact that now that I know about this thing, it's actually getting better. Stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of stuff I was putting in my appreciation journal.
Right.
Like, I appreciate the fact that I'm finally dealing with deep feelings inside myself that my emotional guidance system's been trying to give me guidance for 70 years, for 60 years.
Exactly.
I appreciate that I have people that I'm working with who are really kind and wise, and they keep encouraging me to do the work and to take really good care of myself. I appreciate that I'm getting the message to take really good care of myself, even though I might be dealing with emotions that feel painful to me sometimes, or feel uncomfortable to me sometimes. I appreciate that I'm recognizing all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it is a real art to be loving of yourself.
So when you talked about earlier about when is it appropriate to be kind and when you're going too far with it, I would offer a distinction in definitions. I would say it's a difference between being kind and being nice. Being nice is like, it's very surface oriented. I say, "Hi Tom, how you doing?" You say, "I'm great." It's like the built-in auto response, right? That's being nice. Yeah. Being kind is going past that surface thing and being loving about something that is either bothering you or bothering somebody else, and just giving love. That's being kind. And I think there's a big difference there between the two words.
It's really different. Yeah. I mean, you can see it when you do mirror work, right? I mean, the way you talk to yourself in front of the mirror, there's a way to be truly loving of yourself, being truly compassionate towards yourself, and recognize when you're saying things that are kind of like, you're just trying too hard, maybe, or you're what? I mean, you've done a lot of that work. You probably could.
For me, it's more like, well, first of all, I just start off with a blatant "I love you," which always was the hardest one for me to do. So I got it out of the way first. It was just my way of doing it. I knew that was going to be the stumbling block, so I figured get the stumbling block out of the way, and then I could relax to do the rest of the mirror exercise. But no, after I got that done, it was mostly about being encouraging to myself, pointing out all the things that I'm doing right, pointing out all the things that are going well, and basically discounting stuff that and not even paying a whole lot of attention to stuff that isn't going right. And if there is a pain that's involved, something that has a persistence to it that does require attention, then finding that reframe, whatever that reframe is, and doing that reframe to myself. So if the let's see, we got to invent a scenario. So if the pain is that I'm frustrated with having to do the bookkeeping for Louise's business, okay? And for whatever reason, it's piled up, and I'm just so tired of it. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. And, oh, God, it's just weighing me down. So during the mirror exercise, I'll reframe it as, thank you for doing all that work that on the bookkeeping that helps us stay on top of keeping the money coming in.
Right. Nice.
Things
so you
like
pat
that.
yourself on the back,
Yeah, I give myself really warm credit for doing the stuff that it really helps me the most.
That's what my coach was telling me last night in a session I had with her. She was saying, reach over with I think she said your dominant hand and pat yourself on your non-dominant shoulder, and say, Tom, you're really awesome for doing this great work that you're doing with your emotions. Or Tom, you're really a good guy. You really know how to take care of yourself and treat yourself with a lot of respect and kindness, or whatever it is, but to give ourselves that literal pat on the back, because we really need constant appreciation and support and love. So yeah, it's one of my biggest lessons, because I've been told so much in my life that I'm too hard on myself. And,
I also find too that if I'm doing that mirror exercise, and as you said, I'm focusing on I'm reframing that pain point. How do I go about doing that? Well, once I reframe it, I also then turn it into a rah-rah session.
A rah-rah session.
Yeah, I do. I'll turn it into I think I can. I'll turn it into come on, you can do it. Come on, rah-rah-ree, let's go. Here we go.
Yeah, well, there's this whole book written about taking a certain stance before you go on stage. Say, before you start the podcast, you stand up in your living room and you put your hands on your hips like a superhero and you say, "I'm awesome." And they say that makes this huge difference in your delivery, your psychology, where you come from, and it's amazing how much we're affected by the way that we choose to be with ourselves, right?
It's also a way of understanding, like you talked much earlier in the program about current events, people who are very famous in the news these days, and all of the angst and the finger pointing and the blame and so forth. Well, one of the factors that are involved with all those stories is that many of those players who are in those very prominent roles have learned, usually not consciously, they just kind of learned it because they learned it, that passion and the real buildup of passion can overcome the most negative situation in terms of getting what they want. So they become expert, deliberate creators using passion instead of focusing on what they love and what they want. And it really points out, I mean, I don't recommend that anyone do that, by the way. I think it's actually self-destructive in the long run. But it does point to the fact that, I mean, Abraham says it themselves. Passion will trump what you're thinking about. If you get passionate about it in one way and you're thinking about it the other way, the passion will trump it. Doesn't matter if the thing you were thinking about was more positive, the passion will still trump it. Well, you don't have to do a negative passion. You can also take advantage of positive passion. And I think that's what you're getting at. That positive passion actually takes any kind of vibration that you already have going in the right direction, meaning any positive feeling thought, any good feeling thought, any good feeling path that you're trying to get yourself on, turning that into a passionate thought multiplies the power of the momentum behind it tremendously. And I think that's where the real value of passion is. I actually think people who are in the news and so forth, or famous people who use passion to overcome their negative situations, are actually tripping over themselves. They're really not taking advantage of something that's a fabulous tool, because when you apply passion to what you love, oh my God, it is so much more powerful than applying it to overcome what you don't love.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah. No, I've been playing my guitar more lately, because I want to be sure that I'm balancing myself if I'm doing this emotional work of dealing with emotions that feel difficult or that I don't understand, or like this pain in my stomach, then I use the guitar and the singing and stuff to really give me a chance to be passionately involved in something that's I just love, something
Exactly.
that's just wonderful for me. And of course, singing, opens up all kinds of channels in your body. Music does.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like using breath and meditation to process feelings. It's
Right.
like they're completely wonderful things. When you do them from a place of just ease and you really relax into your breath, it's just such a wonderful way to deal with anything.
Yeah,
I've said for years.
that's one situation where I really advocate fake it till you make it. Because if you have something that you want this thing, so you're focused on X in a positive way, and you really want X, but you can't seem to build the passion for it normally, that's a good time to fake it till you make it, to pretend that you have the passion, to pretend that you're really, really feeling excited about it, to just, do like a cheerleading thing and jump up and down and get excited. Because now you're focusing passion on something you actually do believe in, and you actually do want, and you actually do feel good about. So you're not working against it, you're working in favor of it. That's a great time to kind of artificially build up your passion.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of my passion, I'm doing a lot of this emotional work because I believe that I will free my passion for a lot of things, and my clarity, clarity, passion. So many of the qualities I want, I think are sometimes denied. I deny them to myself because that energy is going into keeping these emotions out of my field of vision, keeping myself from not accepting the fact that I have some really strong self-judgments and self-criticisms and self-anger or sadness or whatever that has not been, I haven't allowed myself to feel it. And I
Mm.
believe that when those feelings get sort of like, they're able to finally move along, then it just opens the door for all kinds of things to flow in from my vortex, because that was the only thing really that was standing between me and letting these things flow. And
Hmm.
then I don't have to hype myself up in any way. This is my ideal, is that I don't really want to hype myself up for anything in my life. I want it to just be there. I
Hmm.
want my passion to naturally just show up. And I think that it's all right there. It's all just there. But there's something that sometimes, well, why is that? Why don't I have more clarity about that? Or why do I keep feeling confused about that? And I
Hmm.
think that it's doing this emotional work that will free up all that. But I don't deny that, other methods are really good to, you know, trigger us into the direction we want to go in.
Well, I think that's why it's so important to be selective about when you're doing something. I wouldn't use fake it till you make it as a general policy.
Yeah, right. You
I would
wouldn't
only
use
use it.
as
I
your
would only use
only
it in
policy.
very specific situations, and most of the time I
Yeah.
don't want to do it because
Uh-huh.
there is too. I mean, if you use it in an inappropriate situation, it's actually going to backfire. So
Yeah.
that's the real word of
Well, I
caution
used to
right there.
believe you could use it all the time. I used to believe that, you can always just keep faking it until you make it,
Yeah,
because whatever you vibrate with, you will eventually become that. But now I see that you got to know what all you're vibrating with already.
this is true.
You know?
Very, very true. Yeah, it's critical. It's like the bottom line of the whole thing. Listen, we only have about a minute left before the music comes on. I want to get a couple things in. First, a reminder: subscribe and share. Make sure you subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. Make sure you share if you haven't shared yet, because you help pass the word along. And I also want to give you a moment, Tom. I mean, you're doing these incredible things, particularly with diving into the emotions and figuring out what's going on from past parts of our lives and so forth. For someone who wants that kind of coaching help, how do they reach out for you?
They can go to my website, which is youarejoy.com, youarejoy.com. And they can sign up there for a free half hour of coaching. There's an obvious way to sign up if they just look at the menu. And then I just gave a guy a free hour the other day because it just went on and on. It was fantastic conversation. So,
That's great.
call me up with whatever's going on and we can talk.
All right. Well, listen, it's been great. I look forward to talking to you in a week, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. I forgot it's the weekend. I was thinking it was Monday. But
Yeah, how about that, right? Yeah, well, we just do the Friday now. So, yeah, have a great weekend. And we hope you'll have a great weekend. And we hope that you'll keep tuning in next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.